Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 ATP Central Workshop. The CTC exists to make transportation planning, funding, and policy more understandable and accountable. Our workshops can take place in diverse locations around the state so that commissioners and staff can hear directly from our stakeholders around California. We now offer hybrid and fully virtual workshops to allow stakeholders to participate more fully no matter where you are. The workshop agenda is located on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. Live closed captioning is available on this webinar. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen, and there will be a number of language options available for you to choose from. Any document that the CTC creates can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at please email us at ctc.catc.ca.gov, and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. For all of our workshops, we encourage interaction with our stakeholders. There will be an opportunity for questions and comments throughout this workshop. For everyone who is attending through the Zoom platform, you should see the webinar control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you will find the raised hand feature as well as the chat tab. We encourage you to use the raised hand feature as soon as we get to the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Commission staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Once you have been unmuted, please make sure to state your name and agency that you are representing. Alternately, you may use the chat tab to submit your comment or question. Commission staff will read those on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link or phone number to access this webinar. These should not be shared. Let's see. Please do your best to be concise, and please make sure that your comments are adding new information. If you face any sort of technical challenges throughout this workshop, please feel free to reach out to me via email or through the chat tab. All right, and that is all I have for the workshop intro. I apologize, everyone, if I start randomly giggling. I just catch a glimpse of myself and almost scare myself a little bit, so sorry about that. Okay. What we wanted to do next was, actually, I might unshare my screen for a second so that we can see everyone who has hopefully dressed up for this workshop. Let's see.
There better be somebody else on here with a costume.
Yeah, I hope so. Someone better be dressed up, please. Okay, so we'll open it up to everyone. Please come on camera and show off your great Halloween costume. And we're going to make note of everyone who dressed up, and then everyone on this call will get to vote as to who had the best Halloween costume.
Oh, there's a lot of costumes.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Seeing some costumes here. Give me 1 second to make note of everyone. Okay. Any other costumes? Okay, since there are a handful of costumes, why don't we go around and ask those who haven't identified what their costumes are, who they are? I think that would be helpful for me at least. Should we start with Nicole?
I'm a vampire.
Very cool, thank you. Jerry?
Truck driver, fix 50.
Thank you, Jerry. Rachel. Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel. For some reason, your audio isn't working. You can also send it in the chat if that's easier. Oh my gosh, Pawnee Goddess.
Oh, I love
What
that
a
so
great
much. That's
costume.
so cute.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, I see we have woman in black, men in black. Very cool.
The whole Lancaster Public Works Department today.
Oh my
The
gosh.
whole
That's
department is
awesome.
decorated with aliens everywhere.
Wow, that's great.
That's awesome. Okay, and I see a Waldo.
I'm not Waldo. Keep looking.
I can't see the computer without my regular glasses though. So.
Oh, I'm in the same
I
boat
gotta-
as you. So if I'm like hovering very close to my camera, it's not to be creepy, although it provides that effect. It's because I actually cannot see. Diego?
I'm a skeleton.
Perfect, thank you. Mara, are you dressed up?
I am. I'm a Swiftie. I have the bracelets and everything.
Oh, perfect.
Yay.
Perfect, thank you. And John, are you dressed up?
See, no, I'm an electrical engineer, and that's really scary to begin with. So it's like my loft here. This is actually for real.
Oh, okay. Well, that's totally fine too. John is dressed up as John. Thanks for joining us. Is there anyone that I may have missed?
I saw Heather pop on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Heather. I missed that.
She popped on for like a second, but I don't know. There
Oh,
she is.
oh my gosh. That is so awesome.
Wait, I don't see Heather. Oh, there she is.
What am I putting you down as, Heather? Is that a skeleton dog?
It's a skeleton dog.
Okay,
Wow.
awesome.
Oh, that's creepy.
That is creepy.
Okay, perfect.
Love your costume, Lewis.
Am I missing some costumes?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it looks like I got everyone down. Waldo, if you don't mind sharing your first name so I make sure that we.
Oh, I'm Susie.
Oh,
I
Susie.
can fix it.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure you get the credit for the great costume. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to put the poll together, and then we'll take a break partway through the presentation so that everyone can vote, and then we'll announce the winners at the end. Okay, so give me 1 second to share my screen again. Okay.
Okay. Lori, did you have anything else you wanted to say before the workshop?
Nope.
Okay,
We can get going.
perfect. All right. Here's my Hermione's wand. Authentic. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are our goals for today. So we'll recap some of the bigger discussions from the October 18th workshop in Madeira. We'll also discuss the federal tool disadvantaged community severity scoring, which was we talked about this at the last workshop, but stakeholders wanted a little bit more details, even though technically we'll also discuss this during the scoring rubrics workshop, but we wanted to make sure people kind of knew what was going to happen with those while we were talking about the guidelines. And then we'll also discuss some potential guidelines, changes, and policy clarifications, and then we will summarize action items at the end. Next slide, please. And this is just a reminder of what the program is probably going to look like for cycle 7. So as per usual, we'll have 4 years of funding. So fiscal year 25-26 through fiscal year 28-29. And we're still anticipating having approximately $555.5 million in funding, and it's shown on thousands in this green, but it is millions. So in the first 2 fiscal years, we'll have about $100 million to program for each fiscal year. And then in the second 2 fiscal years, we'll have about $177 million to program for each fiscal year. Next slide, please. So Alika usually goes over this slide, but I think she's working on something right now. So I will go over this. This is just our central workshop schedule. So our central workshops are kind of our guidelines workshops. And we are almost done with our pure guidelines workshops. We have today, and then we have Wednesday, November 8th. And then on November 16th, we'll have a workshop focused on the Quick Build program, and there may be a couple guidelines topics from the November 8th workshop that are carried over to November 16th. I should also say we are going to have a briefing with our Equity Advisory Committee this week, and we'll come back to the stakeholder group if any recommendations come out of those briefings with the Equity Advisory Committee. And then we will finalize the draft guidelines. And on December 5th, Caltrans will be presenting their project study report equivalency workshop. So that is a really important workshop to attend if you're an applicant and you want to know more about how to make sure your project is PSR equivalent and get all those great details into your layouts and plans and estimate. And then in January, we'll be talking about the application. And then in February, we'll be talking about scoring rubrics. And okay, so that's our workshop
Hermione,
schedule. Yeah.
so for the December 5th workshop, that should be a hybrid. We're working on getting a room for that.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Lori. So yeah, there should be a in-person participation option in Riverside if you're attending the Riverside CCC meeting. So there should be one there, but you also will be able to participate via Zoom if you're not able to make it to Riverside. All right, Achille, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, I will hand it back over to Achille.
Okay. Should I launch the poll? Do you think,
Yes.
or okay.
Sure.
Give me 1 second. There were a couple others that just hopped on. Okay, everyone, I'm going to launch the poll to vote for your favorite costume. You should see it now. Looks like there's still quite a number of people voting, so we'll give it another minute.
Achille, what does the winner of the costume contest win?
That is a great question, Val. The winner wins an opportunity to present an inspirational story at one of the future ATP workshops. Oh, Deborah, you don't see the poll. Let me see if I can try sending it to you directly. All right, it looks like just about everyone has voted, so I'll go ahead and end the poll. Deborah, I apologize that the poll didn't get to you. I can also send it to you after the fact and you can add in your vote. Let me see. Okay. Did everyone want to see the results now?
Yeah, actually, let's see them now.
Sure. I'll just share the results with everyone.
Wow, kind of a tight race there.
Yeah, it is. It looks like Susie won with her Waldo costume. And then in second place, we have Rachel as the Pawnee Goddess. And then we have Candace as Men in Black, Woman in Black. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for participating. Congratulations to Susie for winning with her great Waldo costume. And again, thank you to everyone who participated.
So, Achille, are we gonna have to coordinate with Susie on her
Yes.
her inspirational active transportation story? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So Susie, I'll reach out to you so that we can start coordinating either for the November 8th or the November 16th workshop, if either of those work for you. So I'll be in touch. Congrats.
Thank you, Susie. Oh, good. We'll have a story from somebody else other than us.
Okay. I think Alika, it is your turn.
Yep.
Sweet.
Great. Thanks. Okay. So
Achilles, sorry. I'm still, Val is going to murder me after this because I'm not keeping with the part.
She's not playing right.
Yeah. She keeps
That's okay.
texting me and telling me that I'm doing things wrong. I'm sorry, Val. Achilles, it's your turn.
Thanks, Hermione. Okay, so for the 2025 ATP virtual site visits, we will be conducting these every Tuesday and Thursday, and we began this effort in October of 2023, and this will continue through mid-March of 2024. We've created a virtual site visit registration form, so we ask that everyone complete that registration form. It then gets submitted to me and I will work with you to schedule a time that works best for the both of us. So again, we encourage all of our attendees and Cycle 7 applicants to utilize these site visits to really discuss any concerns that you have with commission staff. We encourage you to sign up and register sooner rather than later. Based on prior cycles, we tend to get an influx as we approach March. And so please don't procrastinate. If you have time earlier, please take us up on that. Okay, so I'll jump into the final 2025 ATP schedule. Okay, so we have the draft ATP guidelines that will be presented to the commission at the January 2024 commission meeting, as well as the draft ATP fund estimate. And then at the March 2024 meeting, we will hold the hearing and adoption of the ATP guidelines. We will also adopt the ATP fund estimate, and the call for projects will go out shortly after. By March 29th of 2024, we will post the scoring rubrics on our website. And then following that, May 10th of 2024 is the large MPO's deadline to submit their optional guidelines to the commission. And the project application deadline is June 17th of 2024. We will either approve or reject the MPO guidelines at the June 2024 commission meeting. And then we will release the staff recommendations for the statewide small urban and rural components along with the quick build projects. And at the December 2024 meeting, we will adopt the statewide small urban and rural components along with the quick build projects. And then any projects that were not programmed will be distributed to the large MPOs based on their location after the December 2024 commission meeting. The deadline for the MPO draft project programming recommendations are scheduled for February 21st of 2025. And the deadline for the final project programming recommendations for the MPO component are April 22nd, 2025. We will post the MPO component recommendations by June 2nd of 2025, and we will adopt the MPO selected projects at the June 2025 commission meeting. And I will pause here to see if there are any questions before I hand things back over. Okay. Hermione?
Thanks. So I actually think that Val is doing the recap for the last workshop.
Got it.
Okay, you betcha. Okay, so our last workshop was on October 18th, and we just wanted to come back to you with any decisions that were made based on discussions from that workshop. Okay, so we had a robust discussion on leveraging points. And so currently applicants can earn up to 5 points in the medium and large application for non-ATP funds pledged to the program. And so we talked about that on if that should be reduced specifically in the medium. And so we heard from a lot of people at the last workshop, and after hearing from everyone and then talking about it and kind of gauging what we thought we heard, commission staff is not recommending any changes to leveraging points in this cycle. So we can revisit it for the next cycle and talk about it with the technical advisory committee. So that's the recommendation, that to not make any changes to the leveraging points. Are there any comments or questions?
I'll give it another second, but I'm not seeing any questions or comments coming in through the chat. Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and then there is some changes to the disadvantaged communities qualifier data year. So median household income will be 2018 to 2022 American Community Survey, and it will be released in December. National School Lunch Program, 2022 to 2023 school year. And we have the data for that. CalEnviroscreen 4.0 is what we'll use for this cycle, and Healthy Places Index 3.0. Any questions or comments?
I'm not seeing any questions or comments.
Okay. Okay, the Justice 40 initiative. So the active transportation program is subject to complying with Justice 40 requirements. So at least 40% of federal investments must benefit disadvantaged communities. And so we will use the climate and economic justice screening tool and the US DOT Equitable Transportation Community Explorer. Those are federal tools to determine which projects meets these requirements. And Hermione is going to talk more about those later in the workshop. And applicants will only be required to provide census tract numbers for the project area. And if the 40% threshold is exceeded in the statewide component, the thresholds may be reduced proportionally in the small urban and rural and MPO components. And we are not foreseeing that we will have any issues at all meeting that 40%. It's just making sure that we track it. We'll pause for just a minute for questions or comments.
I'm not seeing anything come in at this time.
Wow. I think everyone's scared of you, Akili.
I might have that effect. You're
I'm gonna
welcome.
reach through the screen.
You never know.
Okay. Guess we can keep moving. We're going. Okay, so I think we're going to Hermione for this
Yes,
part.
thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Val.
You betcha.
Okay, so Val just talked about Justice 40, and just to reiterate what she said, for the purpose of tracking Justice 40 requirements, all applicants will need to do is give us census tract numbers, and then we will track it on the back end. However, we did have a stakeholder request that we add the two federal tools as disadvantaged community qualifiers in the program. And since we have to use them anyway for Justice 40, we are open to that idea. And so at the last workshop, we presented kind of the criteria that we would use for those two tools. And so basically how a community would qualify as disadvantaged using one of those tools. So there was a lot of discussion about that at the last workshop, and I think there was some curiosity about how this would actually be scored when it comes to severity and location for a project. So usually this discussion would occur at a scoring rubric workshop. However, because these are new tools, we just want to make sure that everyone kind of understands what they are and is kind of comfortable with how we would be scoring severity using these tools. And so we came up with some proposals for each of the two tools of how we would score it. So we can discuss those today. And we can also, depending on how the discussion goes today, we can also revisit this during the scoring rubric discussion. So next slide, please. Okay, so the first tool that we're going to discuss is the United States Department of Transportation Equitable Transportation Community Explorer tool, or the ETC. So this is a web tool created by USDOT to help agencies understand the cumulative burdens that communities face because of underinvestment in transportation. So there's two sets of results for the ETC. If you go to their website, you'll kind of see the tabs for both. There's national results and state results. So national results compare census tracts nationally against each other. So like if your census tract, like if you have a project with one census tract, that census tract would be compared to every other census tract in the country when we're like looking at these different burdens. There's also state results. So state results take each state and they compare the census tracts in that state to the other census tracts in that state. So with the state result, Your census tract would be compared to every other census tract in the state. So we propose for the ETC to use the state results because it's in alignment with what we do with most of our other tools. So like, for example, CalEnviroScreen is only comparing census tracts to other census tracts in California. Healthy Places Index is doing the same thing. When we do median household income, we're looking at the median household income of a census tract compared to the statewide median household income. So kind of consistent with that. So we would like to use the state result. And we wanted to kind of give people an idea of what these tools include and kind of how they're looking at a disadvantaged community, like what makes a disadvantaged community, and what kind of indicators that they're measuring. So the ETC measures 5 different components, and each component has different indicators. So and so I'll get to how they're calculated in a minute, but so they're measuring transportation insecurity. So transportation insecurity, when they're looking at that, they're looking at transportation access, transportation cost burden, facilities per 100,000 people. Okay, and then they're also looking at climate and disaster risk burden. So for this, they're looking at extreme weather. So estimated extreme heat days in a year, estimated extreme precipitation. They're also looking at an annualized loss due to disaster. So this is a kind of a dollar amount attached to what communities are expected to lose during an extreme weather event or a climate change event. And it also looks at sea level rise. It also looks at environmental burden, so pollution, proximity to hazardous waste sites, and proximity to airports, railways, and ports. It looks at health vulnerability, so asthma rates, cancer rates, high blood pressure rates, diabetes rates, and mental health conditions. And then it also looks at social vulnerability, and this is looking at the percentage of the population over 65 and under 17, percentage of the population with disabilities, English proficiency, the amount of mobile homes in a census tract, poverty level, high school graduation status of the population, unemployment rates, housing cost burdens, percentage of the population lacking access to the internet, and percentage of the population without health insurance. So each indicator is given a percentile, and then the percentiles are summed, and then a final, basically the final percentiles are ranked, and from that you get a final index score. And there's a really cool diagram online that you can look at if you go to this website that shows you exactly how this is calculated, and you can kind of download the data. And then I went through and I replicated how they calculated everything, just so I knew it, so I understood it. But yeah, so basically they get a final index score for each census tract, and the higher the score is, the more burdened that census tract is, or the more disadvantaged that census tract is. So this is kind of, the way that this is kind of laid out is pretty similar to some other tools that we use. And I'm not saying the actual content is similar. I mean, there's overlap for sure, but just how things are calculated and how we can kind of come to a scale for severity. So next slide, please, Achille. Okay, so we presented this language at the last workshop. A census tract identified as the most disadvantaged 25% in the state according to the ETC Explorer state results. And the final index score must be greater than 3.43447. And then it tells you where you can find the data. We'll also have kind of a a link within the application that people can go to get the correct data. And then it's laid out basically, so the severity score is 0 to 4 points in the application. And so if the final score is a 3.7857 or greater, it's the 10% most disadvantaged, it would get 4, and that's scaled down to 0, so less than 3.43447. So now this is a lot of numbers, but this is basically replicating how we score CalEnviroScreen and Healthy Places Index. It's basically the same system for scoring as those two tools. And then I have an example on the next slide of what this looks like in the application. Can you go to the next slide, please, Achille? Thank you. So in the application, because generally a project covers more than one census tract, not always, but generally we'll see multiple census tracts for a project. So, this is kind of like how it's laid out in the application. You have to enter your census tract number, the population of that census tract, and then the final index score. And so what we would do, just like we do with all of our other most of our other categories, would be a weighted average that accounts for the population of each census tract. So the final score, when you account for population of each of these 4 census tracts, would be a 3.78459, which is a severity score of 3 based on the table on the previous slide. And then location would be scored just like we score location for any other qualifier. So it's 2 points if it's fully in a disadvantaged community, 1 point if it's partially in a disadvantaged community, and 0 if it's not in a disadvantaged community at all. So if you look, that last census tract there has a final index score of a 2.9 something something something. So that's below the threshold score for a disadvantaged community. So that is not a disadvantaged community. So overall, this project would be partially located in a disadvantaged community. Okay, so that's everything for the ETC Explorer. And I don't know if there's any questions on this right now or any comments on this. I'm happy to answer any questions now, if there are any.
We got one question from Susie asking if a corridor borders a disadvantaged community, is that partial or fully in it? Or rather, if the corridor is the border?
So, I need to see like an example of this, but so if the corridor is, if the project limits are the border between like a disadvantaged community and a non-disadvantaged community, so if it's basically right on the census tract line, it would be partially. If every single census tract that surrounds the project is disadvantaged, it would be fully. You could technically have a project that you're including disadvantaged communities in your table, but you're claiming benefit to, they're not actually located in. So you could get 0 as well, depending on the layout of your project. I'm not sure I fully understand your question, Susie. I'm like trying to answer it. But I don't
The
know.
one that you said first is what I meant. Like the census tract on one side of the corridor is, and the other one on the other side is not.
Yeah, so that would be partially.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Any
Any
other?
other questions? Oh, sorry, Achilles.
It's okay, Hermione. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. And if anyone has anything that they just like to come off mute and say, that's fine as well. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else.
Okay, we can go on to the next one. Okay, so this next tool is a little bit trickier just because it's not really similar. Again, there's overlap in what it's measuring, but it's pretty different from our other tools that we've used in terms of how it like puts out results. Okay, so this is the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, and this was created by the federal government to identify disadvantaged census tracts nationally. So in this tool, so this is a little bit different than any tool we've used before, except for maybe free and reduced price meals or National School Lunch Program. In that it is looking at things at a national level. So it is comparing census tracts nationally. So generally we've had things at the state level. The National School Lunch Program is kind of looking at a national threshold for that. But so anyways, this is a little bit different in that we're kind of looking at things on a national level rather than at a state level. And in order to qualify as a disadvantaged community under this tool, a census tract has to meet the DAC threshold for one indicator in one of the tool's categories. So the tool is divided into different categories, which I'll go over in a minute. And then just like the ETC, it's broken up into different indicators under those categories. So under each category, there'll be several different indicators, but they'll only have to meet the threshold for one of those indicators to qualify as a disadvantaged community under that category. Okay, so I'll kind of just go through the different categories that they have. They have climate change, so they're looking at expected agricultural loss, building loss, population loss, flood risk, and wildfire risk in this tool. They have energy, which is looking at energy costs, and some pollution in the air. They have health, which is looking at asthma, diabetes, heart disease, and then low life expectancy. Housing, which is looking at historic underinvestment due to redlining, housing costs, lack of green space, lack of indoor plumbing, and lead paint. Legacy pollution, which is really interesting because there's some things that don't really apply to California. They're looking at abandoned mines, and I looked at the data, and there were 0 census tracts that met this criteria in California. But they're also looking at things like hazardous waste facilities located in that census tract. And then it's also looking at transportation. So it's looking at diesel particulate matter, transportation barriers, which are basically the costs and time spent on transportation relative to other census tracts. And then traffic, proximity, and volume. It also looks at water and wastewater, so wastewater discharge and leaking underground water storage tanks. And then it looks like that has this category called workforce development, which has a lot of different things in it. This one is a little bit different than the other ones, and I'll explain why in a second. So under this category, they are looking at linguistic isolation, which is the share of households where no one over 14 speaks English. They are looking at a very high threshold for median income, poverty levels, unemployment. Okay, and then there are 2 other categories. So tracts that overlap with tribal lands are automatically considered disadvantaged communities. And then this last one, neighboring census tracts, is a census tract doesn't qualify under any of those categories. However, every single neighboring census tract does qualify under one of these categories, and that the census tract in question meets a certain threshold for median income. So for every category except for workforce development, tribal lands, and the neighboring census tracts, the tract must be in the 90th percentile of the indicator that they're trying to qualify under, and it also must meet a low income threshold. And then in the workforce development one, again, the indicator has to be in the 90th percentile to qualify as a DAC, and it has to meet a low high school diploma threshold, so basically lower levels of high school graduation in that census tract. And then, yeah, the neighboring tracts category, they have to basically still meet the same low income threshold as the other categories. So that's kind of what the tool contains. Just wanted to give everyone an overview. They have a lot of really good resources on their website, a lot of guides if you're interested in learning more about the tools. I am by no means an expert. However, so with this tool, it's a little bit tricky for us to calculate severity because there's no real ranking that comes out of the tool. Basically, it's kind of okay, it qualifies under this category. Yes, it's a disadvantaged community. So tracts can qualify under, 0 categories, or they can qualify under 1, or they can qualify under many. And with a lot of our other tools, it's much more straightforward how we would calculate severity, like I just presented with the ETC tool. We get a final score, like in Callum Virus Screener, we get a final percentile and a Healthy Places Index, or we can make kind of clear-cut thresholds with things like median household income. So it's a little bit tricky to come up with a severity scale for this. And one of the suggestions that the federal government has in their technical documentation is to basically tally the number of categories that a census tract qualifies under to kind of show which census tracts are more burdened. So, for example, if a census tract qualified under health, housing, and climate change, they would have a tally of 3 categories that they qualify under, and then let's say another one qualifies under, workforce development and legacy pollution, so they qualify under 2. So that was kind of the suggestion from the federal government of how to prioritize more severely disadvantaged or more overburdened communities. So taking that suggestion from them, we came up with a proposal for this. Can you go to the next slide, please, Achille? So basically, we would tally the number of categories that each census tract qualifies under for a project. And then, like we do with our other DAC qualifiers, we would come to a weighted average of number of categories that the census tract, that the project census tracts qualify under. It's a lot of words in a sentence, but basically trying to come to an average number of categories when you take into account the whole project, but also take into account the population of each census tract. Next slide, please. So this is just another example. Oh, by the way, these census tract numbers that I put on here are from these ones are from Alabama, because I don't know how familiar people are with their own census tract numbers, so I didn't want anyone to feel called out, so I just used numbers from Alabama. So these are just 4 random census tracts, the number of categories that they qualify under with the tool. So we've got one with 6, one with 3, one with 5, and another one with 3. We've got the population of each census tract. So it came up with a weighted average of this to come to a final score of, or final weighted average of DAT categories of 3.81, which according to the table on the previous slide would be a severity score of 2. And then the location score, these are all disadvantaged communities. So the location score would be a 2 because it's fully located in a disadvantaged community. Okay, so this is quite technical and I'm sure people are a little bit confused, but we can stop to see if there are any questions or comments on this.
I'll give it another second to see if someone has anything they want to include in the chat. Otherwise, attendees can also unmute themselves and raise any questions that they have. Carl, go ahead.
Thank you, Hermione. I think this is a great suggestion and happy to see that you included a new way to calculate severity as opposed to just kind of leaving it off the table for any jurisdictions that would be using this to qualify. So supportive of the proposal.
Thanks, Carl.
And I didn't know if I should rename myself as being from Skag since it is Halloween. That was the scariest thing I could think of.
We do have someone from Skag on the call, so don't be too mean. And
Okay.
she's dressed up as a Pawnee goddess, so we love her. Oh, you made her sad, Carl.
Sorry, Rachel. I should have said LA Metro, but then I don't want to make Shelly sad. Anyone from Southern California.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks.
And you made Shelly sad as well. So great work.
We got a comment from Aaron stating, Hermione, I appreciate all the effort that went into evaluating and summarizing the federal tools.
I just have to say that Hermione, I've already told Achille and Val this, but Hermione is my favorite fictional character ever. I wanted to be Hermione when I was growing up, and the fact that people are calling me Hermione is a dream come true, so thank you.
Achille, did you always want to be Achille when you were
Always.
That's
Yeah,
her
This is my
dream.
true self. I finally get to share it with the group.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm not seeing any other comments come in at this time and no hands raised.
Okay, well, we'll probably, since this isn't actually in the guidelines, we'll probably bring this up again during scoring rubrics. So there'll be a little bit more of a chance to go and look at it and provide any comments when we talk about this in February.
Yeah, Hermione, and we can talk more about this when we talk about the application, like you said, but let me just ask you something just based on when you've looked at it, when someone's filling out an application, is it worth their while to check out these federal tools too when they're determining which DAC qualifier to use?
Val, that is a great question. So we recommend that you look at every tool available and see what works best for your community, because each tool, so including all the other tools we have, because each tool is measuring kind of a different type of disadvantage or a different type of burden. So there may be areas in your community that, there's a little bit more of a burden. And we actually did kind of a statewide assessment using all of our current tools to see to see like which tools tend to work better for which areas in the state. And the results are really interesting because it really does vary. There's a lot of like geographic variance and like what types of burdens different communities in the state are facing. So thanks, Val. That's a great question.
Betcha.
I'm not seeing any other questions or comments.
All right. Well, thanks. Then I think handing it back over to Val for the next one.
Okay, so here are some other potential changes that we wanted to bring out to you. Okay, so this is something that was proposed by a stakeholder about California Native American tribes. So currently, federally recognized tribes are eligible to apply for the Active Transportation Program. And a stakeholder requested that non-federally recognized tribes, or what's called California Native American tribes, be eligible as well. And commission staff is supportive of possibly expanding this, but we need to look more into it, and there are potential contracting issues at this point. So we need to continue to work on this with our technical advisory committee and the tribal liaisons and the other tribal experts, and possibly bring this back in cycle 8. So at this point, it will remain federally recognized tribes are eligible for the ATP. Any questions or comments?
I'm not seeing anything right now.
Okay. Okay, I guess we can move on. Okay, so these are just some policy clarifications. Okay, so this is the project cancellation process. This is a new process. So sometimes active transportation projects fail, or the applicant decides not to pursue the project for there could be any number of reasons. And so right now, when that happens, we don't really have a set process. So it's hard to keep a handle on what's going on with this. So we decided it would be better to have like a set process for what to do. And this is not saying that this is going to lead to any kind of being penalized at all in future cycles or anything like that. This is just a process that we want to put in place, so we're not losing track of if a project is canceled and why and what happened, because it helps us learn where there are pitfalls and things like that in the kinds of projects that agencies are proposing. So what we're going to ask is that the implementing agency needs to submit a letter that's signed by their chief executive officer, public works director, or other officer authorized by a governing body to Caltrans Commission, that includes the reason for the project cancellation, the efforts taken to avoid the cancellation, and what lessons were learned, and what challenges led to the cancellation. And then we will hold a follow-up call with the implementing agency just to hear more about it, and just want a formal way to put these projects to bed if they end up being canceled. And so the reason that we want it from an authorized officer of the agency, because that's what we request in the application. So if we requested an application, it seemed appropriate that this kind of letter also canceling would come from the same person or the person in that position. Any questions?
Not seeing any hands raised or questions in the chat.
Okay, guess we can move on. Okay, and this is leveraging funds. This is, we're adding the underlined part, applicants without a signed letter of commitment will not receive the leveraging fund. So we're asking for a signed letter of commitment. We always check for this. We want to make sure that those leverage funds are really committed because the applicant gets points in the medium and large application for providing leverage. So we just want want assurances that it is committed funds. Okay.
Not seeing any hands raised or comments in the chat.
Okay. Timely use of funds. This is just addition that the additional guidance on ATP timely use of funds can be found at the Caltrans Local Assistance website with a link to there. It's just has more, we get a lot of questions on the timely use of funds deadlines. So if you go to the local assistance website, that should help all the implementers out on making sure that they meet their timely use of funds deadlines.
Not seeing anything in the chat or any hands raised.
Okay. Oh, okay. So this is also, some of these things are just making sure that they're clarified in the guidelines. So this is if there's savings when at a contract award, it will be returned to the ATP. Which I think we were doing anyway. So yeah, so this is just making sure that's clear.
Again, not seeing any comments or hands raised.
Is that it?
Yep.
Wait a minute. It's only 2:10.
It's a record, Lori or Val.
What? Well, I don't know if that's good or bad.
I think I scared everyone from
I know.
participating.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a Halloween miracle.
It is a Halloween miracle. Next workshop is November 8th. And so Hermione and Achille, this is the one that, so we'll be meeting with the Equity Advisory Committee on Friday. So or representatives from the Equity Advisory Committee that have volunteered to participate in our guidelines process. So, and if they have any suggestions, then we will bring those back at the November 8th workshop. I have that right, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
And yeah, anything else we should talk about? Any questions? We have plenty of time.
And we don't have any action items for me to walk through either.
Hmm.
I think you've all been so very, I think you've all been so very thorough in these initial workshops and responsive that everybody feels informed. At least that's how I feel. Up to date, informed. There isn't a lot of change because things are, you know, the big changes are being pushed to the next cycle so we can keep some stabilization. I think that's really where we're at this point. It's a good place to be.
Thank you, Candace. Yeah, we're really trying because there's you know, a lot of projects, still good projects out there that haven't been funded yet. So we didn't want to make major changes this cycle. So it's not, hopefully not a ton of work. You know, the big changes are the Justice 40 and having the Submittable as the platform for the applications.
I think that'll be the biggest curveball.
Yeah.
Will be the new platform. But I recall, I want to say it was Safe Streets for All utilized a very, very similar platform. And it was so user friendly. It was a breath of fresh air.
Oh, good. Good.
We've gotten a couple comments in. Lucy stating that she appreciates our updates. Kamala noting, I'm really happy that you're using Submittable, which is great to navigate. And then we got a comment from Gustavo asking, I might have missed it. Was there a maximum amount for planning applications?
So Gustavo might be asking about if we have a cap on the amount of plans that we can fund. So it's still the 2% of the funding can go to plans, up to 2%, which I don't think we've been meeting that the last couple cycles.
No, we haven't been.
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody wants to ask any general questions like that, go ahead. You know, we'll hang out here for a bit.
Yeah, we can hang out and ask any questions that people have.
Maybe some comments here.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm in a rural area, Bishop, and looking at all this. And Bishop has very little, the whole town's about a mile square. Commuting's an issue. Actually, a lot of these are not, as long as we have a medical facilities, and we do have a transportation public thing. Mammoth up north of here is just weird. Their big issue, particularly in the winter year, is what to do with all the workforce that are living in their cars, and they have to plow the roads. So they set it up so they plow certain areas where they can park overnight, so they can live there. You know, so, and we do have a reservation right at the end of my street. Anyway, it's interesting listening in on the categories. I was also thinking years ago they had one of these early ones in north of Los Angeles where they had, according to all the guidelines, a really impoverished area. You know, people were unemployed, there was rural land, there was no jobs available. And then they looked closer, and these were wealthier people that just had rural land. So they weren't impoverished at all. So anyway, it looks like you're making progress on seeing where these funds can really be used. And here too is people living in Bishop, they're kind of short on housing, but there are people that are actually working in Mammoth.
Oh.
the ski resorts and they live here. And we do
Mhm.
trailer parks, a lot of them. Anyway, just thoughts from John here in Bishop.
Thank you, John.
Let's see. I'm not seeing any other. Oh, we have one that was just submitted by Maria. She noted, I joined a little late. Was the leveraging discussed from the last meeting where you were voting to see if you would keep the 5 points? Because they make a big difference now that the cutoff may be higher.
Yeah, we did talk about that at the beginning. So we, we talked about, as you know, at the last workshop about possibly reducing the leveraging points, maybe just for the medium. So we had a good discussion last workshop on that. And, after listening to everyone and talking about it, amongst our team, we have, it appeared to be the stakeholders' will for it not to be changed this cycle. So it will remain the 5 points, up to 5 points for the medium and large, but we can revisit it next cycle if need be.
We got a comment from Allison asking, will bike ped crash history be a consideration for equity where a location is not in a disadvantaged community?
Allison might need to come off mute to ask that. I don't totally understand.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I was curious about, like, if a location isn't a disadvantaged community, but it does have a certain bike ped crash history, how would the scoring work for in that situation? Or is it, I guess, the big picture of equity? How is there equity for communities that may not be disadvantaged but have higher bike ped crash rates?
So I guess I'll answer it in a couple ways. First is that I think you're asking if it is considered in as a disadvantaged communities criteria. And I don't, Hermione, was that in any of those federal tools? Are they is it considered in the federal tools? I don't think so, but
So the federal tools do consider
okay.
Not crash history, but they consider like proximity to high volume street or like proximity to high volume streets.
Okay.
And
so go ahead.
So the ETC Explorer looks at a lot of different things. It looks at like walkability of communities as well. It has some really interesting like data in it and indicators in it that people could definitely pull out and use in their application.
Yeah, so it's not a like a standalone way to be considered as a disadvantaged community, but we definitely score on that in the safety question. So it is, and the safety question is one of the highest scoring questions in the application. So bike ped crash history is definitely a consideration. I don't know if that answers you, Allison, or not.
Yeah, I think that helps. shed some light on that. I was just thinking in terms of like the disadvantaged community factors. You were talking about the federal, some of the ETC Explorer. I know sometimes that data is not super reflective on what, is specific to a certain location. So I was just wondering if there's a way, like if we were to pull some crash history for a location, if that could help in that determination of whether or not it's disadvantaged based upon their crash rates.
So I guess when we, at least in our traditional definitions of disadvantaged communities, we're looking more at income and more income levels, or free and reduced price meals for lunches, or the Callan virus screen. So we don't quite look at bike ped crash history in that way as criteria to qualify for a disadvantaged community. If you, Allison, if you have a specific project that you plan to submit, I would suggest that you schedule a site visit, at least a virtual site visit with us, so we can talk about your project specifically. That will probably help more.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything else at this time. Oh, one comment from Ona stating, thanks CTC staff doppelgangers. I appreciate the good work you all do with this process cycle after cycle, and I salute you three for bringing the Halloween spirit. Thanks, Ona.
We'll give it a couple more minutes, see if we get anything else.
Not seeing anything else come in.
I think everybody's anxious to get ready, put on their costumes for trick or treating or going to a party or whatever.
Or they've had too much chocolate.
Yeah, I did start eating my Halloween candy.
Candace just noted, have a safe but fun night.
Thank you, Candace.
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 Okay. Well, Akili, Hermione, what do you think? Should we call it done?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Happy Halloween.
You too.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.